Reconciliation. It's not a word in common use today, unless it's used in very specific situations, as for example, in a legal sense regarding divorces or bank statements or players on sports teams. We may say that people reconcile their differences, but even that's not a true reconciliation as we're thinking of it today. As we are considering it in our scriptures, the best definition would be a restoration. Even better, in our Catholic understanding, it would be a restoration of a loving relationship. Sadly, its non-use, the use of the term reconciliation, in our ordinary conversation is likely a result of its actual rarity in our world today. So now, looking at reconciliation, what does it involve? Well, first, unfortunately, by definition, it involves a break or a rupture in a relationship. Merely drifting apart would likely not involve a reconciliation. In order for two parties to effect a reconciliation, one party or perhaps multiple parties need to have broken a relationship in the first place. So let's explore the reconciliations spoken of in our readings today. In Joshua, we see that God has reconciled with the Israelites. We cannot overestimate the importance of the Israelites being able to eat of the produce of the land, for they had been wandering in the desert for 40 years. This is the culmination of God's plan for them when he brought them out of Egypt. It is significant that it comes after their annual celebration of the Passover. This is a special ritual or ceremony by which they remembered God's redemption. Now, the reconciliation is given to us in the statement, "I have removed the reproach of Egypt from you." Now, there's a difference of opinion in the commentaries that I read as to if this is a proper translation of the actual words, and I can't know who's right exactly, but I think I'll speak to what those English words mean to us in our understanding today. A reproach is a disapproval. Well, who was disapproving? If Egypt was disapproving that the Israelites had escaped, nobody cared. It was God's disapproval of the way the Israelites had behaved after this great act in which God had freed them from slavery to Egypt. So that is removing that reproach, removing God's disapproval is the reconciliation. Now, there are several aspects to reconciliation in our second reading, Paul's second letter to the Corinthians. The first is that Paul tells us reconciliation creates a new thing, which is kind of understandable. If you reconcile, you fix what was broken. You know, if you take something that is broken and repair it, it is, in a sense, something new. It's similar to the same thing that it was before, but it's a broken, repaired thing. And so that's a good understanding of reconciliation for us. We become new through reconciliation with God. We were broken, we become a new creation, unbroken and united again and close to God. And so the implication of that is that when we reconcile with God, we can put to rest the past. We are not the same person as we were when we sinned. We are a new person. We need not feel guilty anymore, and we can forgive ourselves. The second aspect comes from the sentence, God, who has reconciled us to himself through Christ, has given us the ministry of reconciliation. This is both a statement affirming the sacrament of reconciliation, as well as a reminder that we are a people of reconciliation. Paul then puts it most beautifully when he says, we are ambassadors, that God can reconcile us to himself through Christ. And through the church, Christ is acting in our world. So we are also ambassadors of reconciliation, not just in the sense of ambassadors of the sacrament, which is a beautiful gift of ministry which God has given us, but we are ambassadors of the way of reconciliation, that reconciliation is important to our human existence. In other words, we're not ambassadors of war. We are ambassadors of reconciliation. We are not ambassadors of hate. We are ambassadors of reconciliation. We are not ambassadors of revenge. We are ambassadors of reconciliation. Now, to illustrate all of this wonderfully for us, Jesus gave us a truly powerful parable. It is not only a parable of God's infinite love, his endless forgiveness, and immeasurable mercy. It is also a model of human reconciliation to be followed by us. The details of the parable we know well. A son asks his father for his inheritance even before his father has passed away. He spends it on dissolute living, which, by the way, is where the word prodigal comes from. It's not that he returned, it was not that he was sorry, it is that he spent the money badly. Broke and hungry and living in a famine-ravaged land, he comes to his senses and returns to his father. Humbled and apologetic, he asks his father to hire him as a worker. But his father not only forgives him, but restores him as his son and throws a banquet for him. So, which part of the story is the sticking part for you? What is it that prevents you from forgiving? Is it the insult to your pride, as it could have been to the father, who was basically told by his son that he was dead to him? Or is it that family offenses are the deepest cuts, that we can expect and accept betrayal and hurts from others, from strangers, but can't forgive them who are closest to us? Is it that the person who has harmed us has not come back to us, humiliated and compliant, having learned their lesson to our satisfaction? Is it that, as the older son who reconciles or cannot reconcile with his brother or his father? Is it resentment for perceived slights, for the attention someone else receives over us, for the love lavished on others that we feel we deserve? That was what kept the brother from reconciling. At least we don't know. Jesus leaves it open. That part of the story is still open-ended. Does he go back in with his brother and forgive him, or does he stay outside and continues to remain distant from both his father and his brother? These are the questions Jesus wants us to ask. Where do we find ourselves in the story? if the story doesn't end the same way? If we do not forgive, what is it that kept us from forgiving? Why do we hold on so tight to our anger, to our grudges, to our unforgiveness, when God lavishes his love upon us as sinners so freely? I know I asked that question, and I know the answer comes back readily by some, doesn't it? I'm not God, and forgiveness doesn't come easily to me. My question is then, why do you expect it from God? If you are created in his image and likeness, then maybe he has a whole lot of pent-up anger and frustration at your flagrant rejection and disobedience of him. Is that it? Or is the reality the reverse? Maybe he created us with the capacity to forgive, and it's a choice we choose to ignore. Maybe we are all able to forgive, and more so than we give ourselves credit for, because we are created in the image and likeness of a forgiving God. So, brothers and sisters, reach out, forgive, and reconcile, and be reconciled. If we are talking now about God, it is even easier, because God, like the Father in the story, is waiting for us. He has already met us while we are still a long way off. His love for us never stopped. There are no hard feelings, no recriminations. Just tell him you're sorry. Do it now. Come to the sacrament of reconciliation. Put aside your guilt, your fear, and embrace his love. Become a new creation and see how it changes your life for the better.